Welcome to Sleepy Music Tales. Hello my friends, and welcome to the channel. I'm Elias, your storyteller and guide through tonight's journey. I'm truly grateful to have you here, joining me in this peaceful space where stories come alive, gently carrying you toward calm and rest. Before we begin, I invite you to find a comfortable place, whether it's lying in bed, settling into your favorite chair, or wrapping yourself in a warm blanket. Let your body relax. Feel the surface beneath you supporting you fully. Take a slow, deep breath in and gently exhale, allowing the weight of the day to drift away. This time is just for you to unwind, to let go, and to be carried by the soothing flow of a story. Tonight's tale is one of mystery, courage, and long-lost connections. We'll journey to the medieval town of Veloria, where the soft glow of lanterns lights cobblestone streets and ancient secrets linger beneath castle walls. On this rain-soaked night, a chance encounter between a wandering healer and a wounded knight sets into motion events that reach far beyond what either could have imagined. Bonds thought forgotten will be rekindled, and dark conspiracies hidden in the shadows will begin to unravel. With every word, let yourself drift deeper into the world of Liraen and Eryndor, to souls drawn together by fate, tested by danger, and guided by the flickering hope of truth. So, close your eyes if you like. Let the sounds and words wrap around you like a soft embrace, and allow your imagination to open. This is your time. A journey not just through a tale of intrigue and heart, but toward tranquility and restful peace. Shall we begin? Let's step into the quiet streets of Veloria, where the rain still falls and destiny quietly waits. The wind swept through the cobbled streets of Veloria, carrying with it the faint scent of herbs and a thin veil of mist that draped the town like a gossamer cloak. Lanterns along the narrow alleys flickered, casting pools of warm amber light that danced on the wet stones. Above, the moon hid behind thick, brooding clouds, occasionally pierced by flashes of soft lavender lightning, a rare phenomenon known as the moonlit storm. Tucked into a corner of an old street, beneath a moss-covered roof, stood the Whispering Hollow, Veloria's age-old apothecary. Its window panes, fogged from the warmth inside, offered a hazy view of flickering lamplight beyond. The air within was thick with the mingling fragrances of dried herbs hanging from wooden beams, and the earthy aroma of freshly ground roots. The gentle crackling of the hearth blended seamlessly with the rain pattering against the tiled roof, creating a soothing symphony that seemed to slow time itself. Behind a sturdy oak counter stood Eryndor, his hands steady as he ground nebble root in a weathered stone mortar. With practiced precision, he coaxed from it a shimmering liquid, its glow reminiscent of morning dew kissed by dawn's first light. He paused, inhaling the subtle sweetness tinged with the richness of damp earth, a scent as familiar to him as his own heartbeat. Nights like this were usually calm, wrapped in the quiet solitude of his work. Yet tonight, something stirred in the air, a prickle of unease, like a whispered warning threading through the peaceful ambience. The soft jingle of the shop's bell broke the stillness, not the wind. Footsteps, heavy and deliberate, echoed off the cobblestones. The door creaked open, A rush of cold air swept in, accompanied by the earthy scent of rain-soaked streets. Framed in the doorway stood a figure clad in darkened silver armor, rainwater tracing rivulets down its engraved surface. The intricate etchings, wings unfurling in elegant arcs, gleamed faintly in the dim light. Beneath the helmet's visor, a pair of eyes met Eryndor's, weary yet unwavering. "I require treatment." A voice rasped from beneath the steel helm, breath hitching with strain. Eryndor's gaze lingered for a heartbeat longer than necessary. Questions swirled in his mind, yet his healer's instincts prevailed. "Come in, close the door behind you." "Ha!" The figure obeyed, pushing the door shut with a dull thud, sealing out the storm's chorus. Water dripped onto the stone floor as the knights staggered forward, one hand pressed against their side, the other bracing against a wooden beam. Blood, dark, thick, stained the gaps in the armor, seeping into fabric beneath. "Sit by the fire," Eryndor instructed, pulling a sturdy chair closer to the hearth. He reached for clean linens and a vial of antiseptic. "I need to remove the armor to assess the wound." "Just bind it," came the knight's curt reply, tinged with a note of urgency and something else, desperation. Eryndor frowned. "If you don't let me clean it properly, it'll fester. Is that what you want?" A tense silence stretched between them, broken only by the crackle of burning logs and the steady drip of rain from soaked armor. Finally, with a reluctant sigh, the knight's gauntleted fingers moved to the clasps. Metal plates clinked softly as the chest piece was eased off, revealing a tunic beneath, dark with blood. Eryndor's breath caught. The cut was deep, clean, too precise for a common skirmish. Worse still, a faint violet hue crept along the wound's edges. Recognition dawned like a cold wave crashing over him. Nightshade, but diluted, mixed with monk's veil? His pulse quickened. This was no accident. "There's poison," he said quietly, grabbing a jar of powdered coal to slow its spread. "You waited too long." "Just do what you must," the knight muttered, voice strained but composed. As he worked, Eryndor's eyes flicked to the discarded armor. His gaze caught on the shoulder plate. Subtle, yet unmistakable. The etched emblem of a winged nargale, an ancient symbol he hadn't seen in years. His chest tightened. Memories he thought long buried stirred restlessly. Then, a flash of lightning illuminated the room, casting stark shadows. The knight's fingers fumbled at the helmet's latch, hesitating, then lifting it away. Rain-soaked hair spilled free, dark strands clinging to a face that time had refined but not erased from his memory. His hands stilled, his heart didn't. "Liraen? Been a while, hasn't it?" A whirlwind of emotions collided within him. Disbelief, anger, relief, sorrow. Why now? Why like this? But those questions dissolved under the weight of immediacy. Her face was pale, eyes glassy with fever. No time for the past, not yet. "You shouldn't be here," he managed, voice rough. "And yet I am." Her breath hitched, a sheen of sweat beading along her brow. "Talk later. Fix me now." He swallowed hard, nodding. His fingers moved swiftly, retrieving a vial of nebel essence and a blade. "I need your blood to activate the antidote. No other way." "Do it," she whispered. A swift cut along her forearm, a crimson droplet falling into the luminous liquid. It flared bright, a soft, pulsating glow that bathed the room in warmth. Outside, the storm raged on, rain pelting the window in a steady rhythm, yet inside, the world seemed to hold its breath. Their gazes met, years of silence bridging a gap neither had wanted, but both had endured. The firelight flickered, casting fleeting shadows across the walls, painting memories and regrets in amber and ash. The winged nargale gleamed from the armor at their feet. A silent witness to this reunion, woven from pain, time, and threads of something that never truly frayed. The storm outside hadn't passed, nor had the storm between them. But as the moonlit storm rumbled overhead, a new chapter quietly unfolded, and neither of them could turn back now. The golden glow from the vial spread softly throughout the room, wrapping it in a warm embrace against the cold rain pounding outside. Eryndor held Liraen's arms steady, carefully dripping the shimmering liquid onto her wound. The mixture sizzled faintly upon contact, like raindrops striking smoldering embers. The air thickened with the scent of herbs. Liraen winced but remained silent, jaw clenched in quiet endurance. Firelight flickered across her face, painting her features in hues of amber and shadow. Eryndor's gaze lingered, a swirl of emotions tightening his chest. Memories, regret, worry, words left unsaid for too long. "You're still as stubborn as ever," he murmured, voice rough with old familiarity. A ghost of a smile tugged at her lips despite the pain, "And you still frown when you're worried." He didn't deny it, focused instead on wiping the blood from her side. The warmth of her skin under his fingertips stirred echoes of distant days, their childhood mischief, secret escapes from palace eyes, and lazy afternoons spent beneath the willows by Silvermere Lake. "Remember," she said softly, voice barely above the rain's steady rhythm, "when you fell out of that willow tree? I thought you'd broken something for sure." Eryndor's lips quirked. "You tied your handkerchief around my arm so tightly I thought you'd cut off my circulation." "But you laughed," Liraen whispered, eyes glinting with fading strength. "You said, 'If being saved by you feels like this, I wouldn't mind falling again.'" Silence stretched between them, thick with nostalgia and the weight of years gone by. Yet reality clawed its way back, the dark tendrils of the wound creeping further than he'd hoped. Frowning, Eryndor reached for a weathered leather-bound book on a nearby shelf. The pages, yellowed and worn, bore handwritten notes and herbal formulas accumulated over a lifetime. "This poison's spreading faster than it should," he muttered under his breath. "Nightshade alone doesn't do this. There's something else." "Malric," Liraen rasped, her breath uneven. "He's been experimenting. A mix of monk's veil and astro root. Attacks the nervous system, clouds the mind." Eryndor's hand stilled. His jaw tightened as frustration surged through him. "What have you gotten yourself into?" "Something I couldn't ignore," she managed between shallow breaths. "The council's gone. Malric seized the army. I was gathering proof. Got too close. And nearly died for it," he snapped, anger and fear tangled in his voice. "Why would you face him alone?" "No one else could," she whispered, eyelids fluttering. "I couldn't stand by and let him destroy what my father built." His fists clenched, nails digging into his palms, Part of him wanted to scold her further, to demand why she still bore the world's weight on her shoulders. Another part, the part that had always known her, always loved her, understood. She was as reckless as she was brave, and that terrified him. Flipping through the book, his eyes caught a familiar entry. For mutated nightshade toxins, use luminous bloom. Petals bloom under stormlight. Combine with Nebelruth and the patient's blood to activate the full antidote. His gaze darted to the window. Lightning flared across the sky. He had no choice. "I need to go," he said, already reaching for his cloak. The luminous bloom grows on the edge of Aran woods. Without it, it's too dangerous. Liraen's hand shot out, gripping his wrist. Her eyes, fever-bright and pleading, searched his. "The moonlit storm. It's not like normal rain. The wind can fell trees. Lightning strikes without warning. You can't risk it." He exhaled slowly, curling his fingers around hers. Her palm was cold, trembling. "You asked me to save you. This is how." Silence stretched, heavy with unspoken fears. Finally, she released him, her hand falling to her lap. "Just be careful." A flicker of warmth passed between them as he squeezed her shoulder, a silent promise. "I'll come back." Pulling his cloak tight, Eryndor pushed through the door. Wind and rain lashed at him instantly, cold and biting, stealing his breath. Behind him, the shop's warmth beckoned like a fading memory, but he stepped into the storm, boots splashing against puddled cobblestones. Back inside, Liraen leaned her head against the chair's worn back, eyes tracing the ceiling beams strung with dried herbs. A sprig of lavender swayed gently above her, releasing its calming scent. Her mind drifted to a summer-long past, 2 children lying on cool grass, counting stars until palace guards came searching. "Eryndor," she whispered to the empty room. "Please, don't let me lose you again." Thunder rolled overhead, rattling the windows. Out in the rain, Eryndor's footsteps faded into the distance, steady and resolute. The storm howled. The night stretched on. But this story was far from over. The rain was relentless. Each droplet struck Eryndor with biting cold, seeping through his cloak as if to freeze him from the inside out. Wind howled through the narrow alleys of Veloria, lifting stray leaves and debris into swirling eddies. Yet, despite the storm's fury, his steps were unwavering, boots splashing through puddles that mirrored fleeting flashes of lavender lightning above. He had traversed these streets countless times, knew each crack in the cobblestones, each twist in the road. But tonight, under the shroud of the moonlit storm, everything seemed altered. The world felt both hauntingly familiar and unsettlingly foreign, as if the town itself held its breath, waiting. Beyond the town's edge, the forest loomed. Aran woods, its branches clawing at the sky, leaves trembling under the weight of rain. Entering its embrace was like stepping into another realm. The wind's wail dulled to a whisper, replaced by the steady patter of water cascading from leaf to leaf, forming a symphony both soothing and ominous. Luminous bloom, the delicate flower so unassuming by day, revealed its magic only under storms like this. Petals of silver, glowing faintly when struck by moonlight or lightning. Nature's hidden lanterns. Eryndor's mind replayed the old texts. It blooms fleetingly, wilting at dawn. To harvest it is to race against the night itself. He quickened his pace, weaving between trees, heart pounding in rhythm with the rain. Branches scraped against his cloak, snagging fabric, but he pressed on. Each breath misted before him, warmth stolen by the storm. Then, there, a clearing opened ahead, bathed in eerie luminescence. The ground sparkled faintly, as if dusted with stardust. Amidst moss and rain-drenched stones, clusters of flowers bloomed, fragile, ethereal. Luminous bloom, their silver petals shimmered with every flash of lightning, casting soft glows that danced across the clearing. Relief surged through him. Kneeling, Eryndor carefully unsheathed a small blade. His movements slowed, precise. Any mistake, and the petals would disintegrate to ash. Raindrops slid down his face, mingling with sweat and urgency. 1, 2, just a few more. A sudden sound, branches snapping, his head shot up. Shadows shifted at the clearing's edge. Eyes narrowed, Eryndor tightened his grip on the blade. The storm's growl masked footsteps, but his instincts screamed, "Not alone." "Quite the night for a stroll," a voice drawled, smooth, mocking. From the shadows stepped a figure clad in dark leathers, hood dripping with rain, pale eyes gleamed beneath the brim. "Or are you picking flowers for a lover?" Eryndor's jaw tightened. "Step aside. I don't have time for games." "Funny, neither do I." The figure tilted his head. "Word is, someone's meddling in Lord Malric's affairs. Dangerous hobby." Malric, the name burned like bile in Eryndor's throat. His gaze flicked toward the flowers, petals gathered but not yet secured. Seconds mattered. The man chuckled. "Relax. I'm not here to kill you." A pause. "Unless you make me." Lightning illuminated the clearing once more, and Eryndor saw it. The man's cloak bore a sigil, a serpent coiled around a dagger, hollow shade. Malric's network of spies and assassins. "Not good. Let me pass," Eryndor said, voice low. "I don't want trouble." "That's a shame," the man stepped forward. "Because trouble's found you." A flicker of movement, too fast. Steel flashed. Eryndor dodged, blade deflecting a swift strike aimed for his ribs. Pain flared as a second blow grazed his shoulder, but adrenaline surged, sharpening focus. They danced amidst rain and lightning, shadows twisting in the clearing's silver glow. Every strike echoed with the storm's fury, every breath drawn in jagged gasps. Then, an opening. Eryndor's foot swept low, knocking the man off balance. He lunged, blade pressed against the spy's throat. "Why follow me?" he demanded. The man grinned, unfazed by the cold steel at his skin. "Orders. Simple ones. Anyone sniffing around the princess doesn't leave breathing." Rage boiled in Eryndor's chest. His grip tightened. But footsteps echoed from beyond. More were coming. Too many. No time. With a curse, he shoved the man back, spun, and gathered the flowers into a leather pouch. Heart pounding, he bolted into the trees. Shouts chased him, blades glinting in peripheral flashes. But Aaron Woods was his ally. Branches clawed at pursuers, roots twisted underfoot. He ducked, weaved, breath burning in his lungs, until the forest swallowed the voices. Veloria's outskirts emerged through the rain, familiar rooftops glistening under the storm's weight. His legs ached, clothes soaked and torn, but the thought of Liraen, pale, struggling to breathe, drove him. Liraen lay slumped in the chair, skin paler than before, breath shallow. "Hold on," Eryndor panted, dropping to his knees beside her. He fumbled with the pouch, retrieving petals now shimmering with collected stormlight. Mixing them with the nebel root solution, he added a drop of his own blood, vial pulsing a brilliant azure. "Drink," he urged, lifting it to her lips. Her eyes fluttered open, glassy, unfocused. "You look awful," she rasped. "Better than you," he shot back, though worry cracked his voice. "Come on, Liraen, don't quit now." Her fingers, trembling, curled around the vial. The liquid glowed brighter, casting both their faces in ethereal light. As it slid down her throat, a shiver racked her body. Then silence. Eryndor held his breath. Then a gasp. A deep, ragged inhale as color bled back into her cheeks. The violet tendrils on her skin receded, warmth returning under his touch. Relief washed over him so fiercely his eyes stung. "You," she whispered, voice steadier, "actually did it." "Of course I did," he said, half laughing, half exhausted. "What kind of apothecary would I be if I let you die in my chair?" Her smile was faint but real. "Told you, you frown too much." He shook his head, sinking back against the wall, chest heaving. Outside, the storm's wrath began to wane, rain softening to a gentle patter. Yet inside, between stolen breaths and shared glances, a different storm raged. Questions unspoken, truths simmering beneath the surface. Eryndor's gaze drifted to her armor, discarded on the floor. The winged nargale gleamed faintly, a reminder of the world waiting beyond these walls, a world filled with conspiracies, shadows, and choices neither of them could run from. But for now, for this fleeting heartbeat, they were simply two souls drenched in rain and old memories, breathing in the fragile quiet that follows a storm. And somewhere deep down, amidst exhaustion and lingering adrenaline, Eryndor realized something unsettling. He wasn't sure if the storm had truly passed, or if this was only the calm before something far worse. Liraen's breathing had steadied, the violet streaks that had spread across her skin now fading into faint, harmless traces. A soft flush returned to her cheeks, painting her once pale face with fragile warmth. Eryndor sat slumped against the wall, muscles aching and clothes drenched. His shoulder throbbed from the gash he'd taken earlier, but it hardly mattered. Not when, just moments ago, he'd feared he wouldn't hear her breathing at all. Outside, the storm had softened into a gentle drizzle. Cool morning air slipped through the cracks in the door, carrying the earthy scent of rain-soaked streets and damp leaves. Beyond the fogged windows, the first timid rays of dawn stretched across Veloria, casting faint amber light over the wooden floorboards. "You," Liraen's voice broke the quiet, hoarse but insistent. "You risked more than you should have." Eryndor opened his eyes, glancing at her. "Would you rather I hadn't?" He paused, his voice dry. "You're alive. I call that worth the trouble." A faint smile tugged at the corners of her mouth. "You still grumble when you're worried." He didn't deny it. Instead, his gaze drifted to the armor lying near her chair, its surface dulled by rain and blood, yet the winged nargale crest glinted faintly in the morning light. Memories clawed their way back, nights spent chasing stars, whispered secrets under the old willows. and the day she vanished without a word, leaving only silence in her place. "I know that look," Liraen murmured. "Ask what you want to ask." "Why?" His voice was low, roughened by exhaustion and something heavier. "Why take Malric on alone? Where's the council, the royal guard?" Her smile faded. "The council's gone, or worse, bought. Malric controls the guard now. Anyone loyal to my family has either disappeared or been silenced." She shifted, wincing. "I couldn't just watch him dismantle everything my father built." "So your solution was to get yourself killed?" His tone sharpened, frustration mingling with fear he couldn't fully suppress. "Do you think I had another choice?" Her eyes flashed with stubborn fire. "If I could expose him, find proof of his dealings." "And that's worth your life?" "If it saves hundreds, yes." Silence stretched between them, thick with things neither wanted to say. Dawn crept further into the room, its light spilling across the worn wooden table where tea mugs sat untouched. The world outside stirred back to life, but inside they remained suspended in this fragile space between past and present. Eryndor exhaled slowly. "I left that world for a reason," he said quietly. "I didn't plan on being dragged back into it." "I know," her voice softened, "but when I stood there listening to Malric's orders, I thought of you." His gaze snapped to hers. "You're the only person I trust," she continued. "Not just because you're the best healer I know, but because you don't run from the truth." The weight of her words settled over him, heavy and undeniable. Trust. It had always been their anchor, even after everything. Finally, he rubbed his face, letting out a breath somewhere between a sigh and a laugh. "So, what's the plan?" A glimmer of relief crossed her face. "There's a group, the Sylvan Circle. They keep records of Malric's transactions. If we can get those ledgers..." "Oh, you're planning to infiltrate them. That was the idea." He shook his head. Insane. But he stood anyway, moving toward the hearth to pour 2 cups of tea. The rich aroma of mint and cinnamon filled the air, a brief comfort amid turmoil. Handing her a mug, he added, "If we're doing this, I'm going with you." Surprise flickered across her face. "Eryndor." "Save it." He sipped the tea, wincing at the bitter taste but grateful for the warmth. "This isn't about the crown or Malric. It's about you." His gaze met hers, steady. "I won't sit here and wait to hear you've been killed." Her lips parted, words caught somewhere between gratitude and something deeper. Instead, she settled for a whispered, "You always know how to complicate things." Only for you. Outside, Veloria awoke under a pale blue sky, rooftops shimmering with rainwater. The early morning chill lingered, but the air carried a promise of clarity after the storm. "How long do we have?" he asked. "Tonight," she said. "They meet when the moon's highest. An old wine cellar behind the market square." He nodded. Every part of this reeked of danger. Malric's reach was long, and the Sylvan Circle wasn't known for mercy. But then again, hadn't danger always followed Liraen like a shadow? And hadn't he always, foolishly or not, been drawn toward that very fire? "We end this," Eryndor murmured, gaze distant. "And no one dies, not you." Her hand found his, warm despite everything. "Thank you." The light grew stronger, banishing the last vestiges of night. Yet even as sunlight filled the room, the shadow of what lay ahead stretched long and dark. But for the first time in years they faced it together, and nothing, no crown, no conspiracies, no ghosts of the past, would stand in their way. Veloria at night was a different world from the gentle dawn. The cobbled streets lay deserted beneath the silver glow of the moon, lanterns flickering like hesitant stars amid a sea of darkness. Every alley seemed deeper, every shadow stretched farther, as if the entire town had become a maze of secrets and hidden eyes. Eryndor pulled his hood low, footsteps steady but cautious. Beside him, Liraen moved with the fluid grace of someone trained for this, a shadow herself, clad in soft leather instead of her usual armor. Their breaths formed faint clouds in the cool air as they slipped through winding alleys, past shuttered shops and sleeping homes. "You're certain about this?" Erynd replied under his breath, eyes scanning the empty street ahead. "Certain enough," Liraen replied, her voice a quiet edge. "The old wine cellar is behind the market square. The Sylvan Circle uses it for clandestine meetings. No one questions a forgotten cellar." He nodded but didn't relax. Plans rarely survived first contact with reality, especially when dealing with a group like the Sylvan Circle. Malric's reach was long, and if he had caught wind of their intentions, well, walking into this could be walking into a noose. Ahead loomed an abandoned building, its crumbling facade casting jagged shadows across the cobblestones. The windows were hollowed out, like vacant eyes watching their approach. Eryndor pressed a hand to the old wooden door. Its hinges groaned in protest but yielded, revealing a narrow staircase plunging into darkness. "I'll go first," he said. Liraen smirked. "Forget who trained with the Royal Guard?" "Yeah," he shot back, "but I'm not the one who almost died yesterday." Her eyes rolled, but she let him lead. The stairs creaked beneath their weight, descending into a cool, damp world. The air grew thick with the scent of mildew and old wood. Sparse torches along the stone walls flickered, casting elongated shadows that danced and twisted with each step. Eryndor's gaze darted downward. Footprints. Fresh ones. "At least 10, he murmured. "Less than I feared," Liraen whispered, though tension coiled in her stance. "Stay sharp. Numbers aren't the biggest threat. It's who's waiting for us." The staircase ended at a thick iron door, rusted but sturdy. Beside it, an archaic lock bore etched symbols worn smooth by time. "Give me 2 minutes." Eryndor knelt, fingers skimming the engravings. His mind worked swiftly, recalling half-forgotten lessons from years past. He had learned to pick locks not for espionage but for rescue missions. Still, irony had a way of resurfacing at the worst times. Click. The mechanism yielded. Beyond the door stretched a wide chamber, ceilings low, wooden barrels stacked along the walls, most rotted through. The mingled scents of spoiled wine and damp stone filled the air. At the room's center stood a round table, around which 7 figures sat, cloaked in darkness. One figure leaned forward, voice a purr. "Tardy, princess." Liraen stiffened but stepped forward, chin lifted. "If this were a trap, I wouldn't have come in person." "Oh," Another figure tilted his head toward Eryndor. And what's he? Bodyguard or something? Closer? Eryndor said nothing, though his hand lingered near the dagger at his waist. The man at the head of the table waved lazily. Enough. We didn't come for banter. The ledgers? That's what I'm here for, Liraen replied. Show me. A parchment bundle emerged from the folds of the man's cloak, dropped onto the table with a dull thud. Malric's dealings, bribes, arms shipments, even a list of those he's silenced. Eryndor's eyes flicked over the visible seals. Royal crests, Malric's signature scrawled in unmistakable ink. It was damning, enough to unravel an empire or start a war. Liraen reached for the papers. Thunk. A blade whistled through the air. Eryndor reacted instantly, yanking her back as a dagger embedded itself where her hand had been. Regrettable, the leader sighed. Malric outbid you. Trap. The room exploded into motion. Figures rising, cloaks flaring as steel flashed. Eryndor! Liraen called, drawing her blade. He was already moving, intercepting a strike aimed at her side. Steel met steel with a sharp ring, the chamber filling with clashing metal and hurried footsteps. Liraen ducked beneath a sweeping arc, her knee slamming into an assailant's chest. She snatched the bundle of papers, tucking it into her tunic. We've got what we came for. Yeah? Eryndor grunted, parrying another blow. Now we just have to not die. They spun away from the table, backing toward a narrow hallway. Footsteps thundered after them. One figure lunged. Eryndor blocked, the force jolting his arms. Pain flared from his earlier wound, but adrenaline drove him past it. Go! Liraen shoved open a side door. Cold air rushed over them as they burst into an alley. Lungs behind them, the door shuddered. Pursuers close. No time to breathe. Left. Eryndor barked. They sprinted down twisting lanes, feet pounding against slick stones. Veloria's moonlit streets stretched and blurred as shadows chased them, steel glinting in peripheral vision. Then, hoofbeats. Liraen's face paled. Malric's cavalry. We expected this, Eryndor said grimly, no turning back. Didn't say I wanted to, she shot back, but fear flickered in her eyes. Shouts echoed through the night. Figures converged from all sides, the trap tightening. But ahead, an open square, moonlight pooling on worn cobblestones. Eryndor grabbed her hand. On three. They surged forward, a blur of movement and breathless determination. Behind them, shadows, steel, and betrayal. Ahead, uncertainty, but also a chance. And sometimes to expose darkness, you had to run straight into it. Miranda's breath came in sharp bursts as they ducked beneath a crumbling awning, shadows swallowing them whole. Their bodies pressed close against the cold stone wall, the warmth of shared breath misting in the frigid night air. Behind them, the faint echo of hooves clattered through Veloria's empty streets, accompanied by distant shouts that carried on the wind. We can't keep running, Liraen gasped, clutching the bundle of documents tightly to her chest. Eryndor risked a glance past the alley's edge. Torchlight flickered along rain-slicked cobblestones, their pursuers sweeping through the streets like a tightening noose. There's a way, he said, voice low but steady. Behind the old blacksmith's forge, leads down to the Liraen veins, the underground tunnels beneath the city. Liraen nodded, her face grim. At this point, any escape route was hope enough. They slipped through narrow back streets, boots splashing in shallow puddles. Rain began to fall again, light but persistent, seeping into fabric and chilling them to the bone. Above, the moon strained against thick clouds, casting only fleeting glimpses of pale light. Reaching the blacksmith's abandoned workshop, a hulking structure long since surrendered to rot and moss. Eryndor knelt beside a pile of debris. His fingers searched the worn stones until they found the right one. "Keep watch," he murmured. Liraen drew her dagger, gaze darting through the shadows behind them. Her senses stretched taut, nerves thrumming with every distant sound. The clang of distant armor, the rush of wind funneling through narrow streets. Click. With a grating scrape, the stone shifted aside, revealing a dark, yawning hole beneath. A faint gust wafted upward, carrying the heavy scent of earth and rusted iron. "Go," Eryndor urged. Without hesitation, Liraen dropped into the darkness, boots landing on cold stone steps. Eryndor followed, pulling the stone back into place above them. Darkness swallowed them whole. The Liraen veins, an ancient network of tunnels carved during the early days of Veloria's founding. Legend said the miners dug so deep they could hear the heartbeat of the world itself. Eryndor struck a flint, sparks flared, and a torch sputtered to life, casting warm, flickering light down the stone corridor. The walls, slick with moisture, glistened like obsidian. Roots snaked from the ceiling, thick and gnarled, casting twisted shadows that danced along the uneven floor. Pools of stagnant water reflected the glow, fracturing their reflections into ghostly fragments. "Which way?" Liraen asked, scanning the labyrinth of branching paths ahead. "East," Eryndor pointed down the left passage. "Leads to Liraen Hollow. If we move fast, we reach the outskirts by dawn." "Liraen Hollow," she whispered. Memories tugged at her. The village lost to war, its ruins a graveyard of broken stones and silent ghosts. They pressed on. Their footsteps echoed in the vast emptiness, every tap of boot against stone reverberating back at them, layering the darkness with whispers of the past. "Careful," Eryndor warned, halting abruptly. He pointed to a thin crack stretching across the floor. Ground unstable, Liraen leapt over first, landing lightly. Eryndor followed. But as his weight settled, a hairline fracture splintered beneath him. Crack. Eryndor. The ground gave way. Stone crumbled, dust exploded upward, and he vanished through the collapse. Thud. A moment of dreadful silence. "Eryndor?" Her voice trembled. Below, a rough cough answered. "Still breathing?" Relief sagged her shoulders. She knelt at the edge, torchlight illuminating him sprawled amidst rubble and dust. His clothes were torn, arms scraped, but no bones looked broken. Small mercies. "You picked the worst places to fall," she muttered. "Didn't see a welcome mat," he shot back, wiping blood from his brow. Then his gaze caught something beyond the immediate debris. Carvings etched into the stone wall. His brow furrowed. "Hold on." The inscriptions weren't random. They glimmered faintly, lines and symbols tracing out patterns that seemed to pulse with their own inner light. "Veloria script," Eryndor whispered. "These tunnels lead to the sanctum of the roots. I thought it was just a legend." "Enlighten me." "It's said to be an ancient temple," he explained, "a place of knowledge and warnings. lost to time. Liraen's pulse quickened. Warnings, knowledge. If Malric's corruption ran deeper than politics, any edge was worth the risk. What's it say? She pressed. Eryndor brushed dust from a symbol. It speaks of a path beneath the earth where truth and lies intertwine, and that only hearts unclouded shall pass unscathed. So, trap or shortcut? Possibly both. Outside, the world hunted them. Behind was certain danger, ahead uncertainty. But standing still was worse than either. Let's take the risk, Liraen decided. We don't have the luxury of safety. Eryndor nodded. He traced a sequence of symbols. Stone ground beneath his fingers. Slowly, a hidden door shuddered open, revealing a spiral staircase plunging into deeper darkness. He glanced at her. Regrets? Not yet, she smiled wryly. But there's still time. With one final breath, they stepped through. The door rumbled shut behind them, sealing off the surface world. Ahead, the torchlight flickered against ancient walls carved with forgotten stories. The staircase twisted downward, air growing colder with each step. Somewhere below, the sanctum waited. And sometimes, the quickest way to find the light was to walk straight into the depths of darkness. The air within the sanctum of the roots was dense and heavy, each breath seeming to carry the weight of forgotten centuries. Eryndor and Liraen descended the spiral staircase, their footsteps echoing off stone walls slick with moisture. Tangled roots pushed through the ceiling and walls, some of them glowing with a faint, pulsating green light, casting eerie shadows that danced with every flicker of Eryndor's torch. How long have we been walking? Liraen asked, breath misting in the cold air. Her fingers tightened around the bundle of documents pressed to her chest. 15 minutes, Eryndor replied, though it felt like hours. The oppressive atmosphere twisted time into something sluggish and uncertain. The surroundings began to shift. The roots grew thicker, some as wide as tree trunks, twisting together in intricate knots. Liraen reached out to touch one, warm, pulsing gently beneath her fingertips. They're alive, she murmured. Eryndor nodded. The legends say these roots connect to the heart of the land. This place, it's aware of us. A shiver ran down her spine. She stepped closer to the torchlight, senses stretched taut. At last, the staircase ended at an enormous stone door engraved with ancient symbols. Standing before it, all sound seemed to vanish. Their footsteps no longer echoed. Even their breaths felt swallowed by the silence. Eryndor reached out, fingers tracing the glyphs. One symbol pulsed faintly under his touch. Fla, 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 meaning truth. Only those willing to face their truth may pass. He read aloud, "We don't have a choice," Liraen said quietly. Stopping now means all of this was for nothing. Eryndor hesitated for a heartbeat, then pressed the symbol firmly. The door shuddered open. A cool rush of air greeted them, carrying with it a strange metallic tang. Light flooded from within, green and soft, like moonlight filtered through deep water. They stepped into a vast chamber. The ceiling soared above, lost among the twisted web of ancient roots that glowed with an inner radiance. The floor was carved with spiraling patterns, forming a circle of memories beneath their feet. At the chamber's center stood a glowing stone pillar, atop which hovered a crystal orb. Its surface swirled with silver and pale blue, shimmering like the moon itself submerged in a pool. Eryndor stopped in his tracks. "Amaranth," he whispered. "Amaranth." Liraen glanced at him. "A relic of legend," he explained, his gaze never leaving the orb. "It reveals the deepest truths of those who touch it. Truths we may not want to face. And we need it to find the way out," she said. "So, half for me, half for you?" Before he could protest, she reached out and touched the crystal. Light exploded. Liraen felt herself pulled away from her body, weightless and floating. The world around her dissolved into mist, silver and endless. Then, images emerged from the fog. A little girl with dark hair ran laughing through a palace garden, sunlight glinting off her curls. Behind her, a boy chased her, waving a worn piece of silk. "Got you." The boy tackled her and they collapsed into the grass, breathless with laughter. The sky above them was a radiant blue, unmarred by clouds or worries. It was them. Liraen's chest ached. We were so young, so unburdened. The scene shifted. Darkness. Cold stone walls. She knelt before the throne room, her father's voice like iron. "You must leave," he said. "I don't. For the safety of everyone." Pain twisted through her. That day everything changed. Elsewhere, within the same light, Eryndor stood, trapped in his own memories. A younger version of himself knelt in a blood-stained field. His hands, shaking, were covered in red. Beside him lay his mentor, the man who had taught him to heal. Lifeless eyes stared skyward. "You can't save everyone, Eryndor," the memory whispered. "But I should have." The guilt burned as fresh as it had that day. The scene twisted. He stood outside the palace gates, watching a horse-drawn carriage disappear down the road. Inside rode Liraen, leaving without a word. He remembered standing there, words trapped in his throat. Say something, stop her. He didn't. And she vanished into the horizon. The light receded. Liraen's eyes fluttered open first. Tears glistened on her cheeks, unbidden and unhidden. "The past," she whispered, "never really lets go." Eryndor's breath was shaky, his gaze distant. "No," he said softly, "but we can learn to walk through it." The amaranth pulsed one final time, then shattered into beams of light that swirled around them before sinking into the floor. A hidden door revealed itself in the far wall. Liraen let out a breath that was half a laugh, half a sob. So, reliving our deepest traumas just to open a door. Sounds about right. Ancient magic is rarely straightforward, Eryndor muttered, offering a hand to steady her. They passed through the archway into a narrow corridor. A cool breeze met them, fresh, carrying the faint scent of grass and rain. Far ahead, a sliver of moonlight beckoned. Eryndor broke the silence. "You know? Even after everything that vision showed me? I don't regret coming with you." Liraen paused, then gave a tired smile. "Neither do I." They stepped out into the open. Above them stretched a star-drenched sky, the moon casting silver over the world. Before them lay a Liraen hollow, ruins cradled by time. Stone walls blanketed in ivy and silence, but between them, Amid the scars and memories, a small fierce flame had reignited. Liraen Hollow stretched out before them, a shattered canvas of time. Crumbling stone walls rose like jagged bones against the silver wash of moonlight, vines coiling through broken arches. Wildflowers sprouted defiantly among the ruins, their delicate petals catching the faint breeze that carried the scent of earth, rain, and faded memories. "We made it," Liraen exhaled, her shoulders finally easing, yet in her gaze lingered a flicker of caution. Relief was a luxury she knew better than to trust. "What now?" "There's a hidden entrance," Eryndor replied, eyes scanning the desolate expanse. "Beneath the old temple ruins, if the stories hold true, it leads straight into the palace." They moved swiftly across uneven ground, boots crunching over gravel and fragments of stone. The world around them felt suspended in time, silent save for the whisper of the wind threading through hollow windows. Then, click. Eryndor froze, hand lifting in a silent warning. Liraen stilled, lips tightening as she slid a dagger free from her belt. "We're not alone," he murmured. An instant later, twit! An arrow thudded into the ground inches from their feet. "Cover." Eryndor grabbed Liraen's arm, pulling them behind a collapsed wall. Another arrow zipped past, embedding itself in the stone with a resonant thunk. "Tell me you've got a plan," Liraen whispered, breath warm against his ear. "Don't die," he shot back. "Good enough? Not remotely." Crash. A dark figure lunged from the shadows, blade flashing. Eryndor met it mid-strike. Steel clashed against steel, sparks scattering like fleeting stars. Liraen twisted away, parrying an incoming blow, elbowing her attacker hard enough to send him sprawling. Her heart pounded a war drum's rhythm, adrenaline singing through her veins. A third assailant charged, too fast. Liraen braced. Clang. Eryndor blocked the strike, jaw clenched against the force that rattled down his arm. He countered, sweeping his leg out and sending the attacker tumbling. "3 directions," he panted. "They're coordinated, professional mercs." Liraen's eyes narrowed. "Nalrek." As if summoned by the name, a slow clap echoed through the ruins. "Perceptive as ever, princess." Out from the darkness strode Lord Malric, his black cloak trailing like a shadow come alive. Silver hair glinted under the moon, and his gaze, sharp, predatory, cut through the night with ease. Behind him, soldiers emerged, armor dark, visors gleaming with malice. "Did you truly think you'd slip away unseen?" Malric's lips curled. "I must admit, I expected less sentimental company." His gaze flicked to Eryndor, still playing hero boy. "We have what we need," Liraen called back, voice steady. "It's over." "Over?" Malric laughed, a rich, dangerous sound. "My dear, you've only danced to the tune I set. That little heist of yours? I wanted you to find those documents." A chill crept down Liraen's spine. A trap. "Why?" she demanded. "They were bait," Malric said simply. "A trail leading me to you and what you hold. But more importantly," his smile darkened, "to the Nexus heart." Silence fell like a blade. Eryndor's blood ran cold. "You're insane. That relic isn't meant to be disturbed." "Its power," Malric hissed, "and I will not let it rot beneath dirt and legend." Liraen glanced at Eryndor. "Options?" her eyes asked. Not good, his look replied. Too many. No clear escape. Malric took a measured step forward. So, choose, princess. Lead me to the heart, or I tear this land apart until nothing remains. Tension coiled, thick as smoke. Then, Liraen smiled. Cool. Razor sharp. You know the problem with men like you. Malric's brow arched. Thwip. An arrow struck his shoulder. He stumbled back, snarl twisting his face. Ambush. From the ruins, Silent and a band of rebels burst forth, weapons gleaming. Miss me? Silent grinned, loosing another arrow. Surprise discount Malric! Chaos erupted, swords clashed, shouts fractured the night. Eryndor seized the opening. Go, now. Liraen didn't argue. They bolted toward the temple's crumbling facade, Silent's team covering their retreat. Back entrance, she gasped between strides. Behind the main statue, Eryndor led the way, ducking debris. The temple loomed, columns cracked but still standing, guardians of a forgotten era. Inside, moonlight filtered through a shattered dome, illuminating faded murals of gods long abandoned. Eryndor scrambled toward the altar, shoving aside rubble until, click, a trapdoor groaned open. Hurry! They slid into the darkness below. Above, Malric tore the arrow from his shoulder, eyes ablaze with fury. Find them. But by the time his soldiers reached the temple, only silence and shadow remained. Below ground, the air thickened with damp earth and the faint scent of moss. Narrow tunnels stretched ahead, labyrinthine and suffocating. Great, Liraen muttered. Dark, cramped, and probably filled with spiders. Focus on not getting killed first, Eryndor quipped, though his smile was grim. She glanced at him. You didn't have to come this far, you know. Yeah, well, he adjusted his grip on the torch. Figured you'd get yourself in too deep without me. Liraen huffed a laugh, soft but genuine. Ahead, the tunnel opened into a vast cavern, stalactites dripping steadily into pools that mirrored the faint torchlight. Somewhere beyond lay the Nexus heart. I hate that Malric knows about this, Liraen said. Doesn't matter, Eryndor replied. We get there first. We end this. And if it's worse than we think, he met her gaze, firm, unyielding. Then we face it together. She hesitated, then nodded. Together. They pressed on, footsteps echoing into the darkness. Above them, Liraen Hollow lay quiet beneath the moon. But the storm gathering beneath the earth was just beginning. Eryndor's and Liraen's breaths echoed through the rough stone walls, reverberating like ancient whispers trapped in the depths of the earth. The torch in Eryndor's hand flickered, casting flickering amber light across moss-covered walls carved with weathered symbols. Their footsteps, though hurried, felt heavier with each passing moment, the air thick with dampness and the weight of what awaited them. The resting place of the Nexus heart, the distant echo of rain above, was a fading memory. Here, the world was darkness and stone, laced with the metallic tang of old air. Liraen glanced at Eryndor, noting the sheen of sweat on his brow. His face was drawn, not just from fatigue, but from something deeper. Fear. Resolve. You know this place, she murmured. Only from texts, he replied, running his fingers along glowing glyphs. The faint luminescence responded to his touch, pulse, but he paused. The legends warned it doesn't just guard treasure. It tests the mind, the soul. Great, Liraen muttered. You could have mentioned that earlier. Didn't want you turning back. You know me. Exactly why I worried. They reached a fork in the tunnel. Above one archway, a symbol of outstretched wings was carved into the stone. Winged Nargale. Liraen's breath caught. The same emblem that adorned her father's armor, the royal banners now etched in a place meant to be forgotten. Beyond the archway stretched a narrow stone bridge spanning a chasm so deep that the torchlight couldn't find the bottom. Across the gap stood a massive black stone door, bathed in a pale green glow. I don't like this, Eryndor muttered. Narrow bridge, closed space. If there's a trap, this is where it'll be. Liraen glanced into the abyss. One misstep and they'd vanish into darkness. Move fast. Malric isn't far. They stepped onto the bridge, their boots struck the stone. Thump, thump, each footfall louder in the stillness, echoing back at them like a countdown. Then, clang, the door ahead swung open. Standing there, Malric. His cloak flowed behind him like living shadow, silver hair gleaming beneath the ethereal light. Behind him, his elite soldiers emerged from the darkness, armor glinting ominously. Convenient, Malric drawled. You've done the hard work for me. You don't understand what you're doing, Liraen snapped. I understand perfectly, he smiled coldly. This is power, and you're just an obstacle. An arrow whistled through the air. Thunk, embedding in the bridge, inches from Eryndor's foot. The stone crumbled beneath him. He slipped. Eryndor! Liraen lunged, fingers snatching his wrist just in time. His body dangled over the abyss, darkness yawning below. Hold on! She gritted her teeth, muscles straining as she pulled him up. Malric's voice cut through the tension. End this! His soldiers advanced, but from the ruins behind, Silent emerged, sword flashing. Not today. Chaos exploded on the bridge. Steel clashed, sparks flying in the confined space. Eryndor rolled aside, throwing a dagger that struck a soldier's arm, sending his blade clattering. Liraen parried a strike, twisted and slammed her elbow into her opponent's jaw. But Malric, he was moving. Ignoring the fight, he strode toward the door, toward what lay beyond. Stop him, Liraen shouted, but Malric slipped through. They fought through the melee, breaking into a sprint. Inside, a cavern opened up, vast and pulsing with light. Hanging above a dais of stone was the Nexus Heart, a massive crystalline orb spinning slowly. Luminous veins traced its surface, beating like a heart, steady, ancient. Each pulse sent ripples through the air, making the ground beneath them shudder. Malric stood beneath it, hand outstretched. Don't, Liraen's voice rang out. You can't control it. Control? Malric's lips twisted into a grin. I am control. And he touched it. Boom. A wave of blinding light surged outward. Liraen flew backwards, slamming into the wall. Her ears rang. Eryndor shielded his face, pain lancing through his skull like 1,000 screams. Malric's laughter turned to a choked gasp. Light coursed through him, his veins blackened, eyes flaring with unnatural brightness. Wait, what? No! The heart rejected him. He screamed as the power turned inward, tearing at him, unraveling flesh from spirit, his body convulsed. Eryndor's voice cut through the chaos. It punishes greed. The Nexus heart flared, pure white, and with a final pulse, Malric was hurled across the chamber, crumpling to the floor. Smoke curled from his fingertips, his breath rasping, unconscious, defeated. But the cavern began to collapse. Stones cracked. The ceiling groaned. It's falling apart. Eryndor grabbed Liraen, pulling her up. Her gaze darted to the heart, still glowing, still calling again. No, Eryndor gripped her shoulders. Enough sacrifices. A beat, her breath hitched. Then she nodded. Let's go. They ran. The bridge crumbled behind them, dust choking the air. Silence covered their retreat, slashing through falling debris. Finally, daylight. They burst from the tunnels, collapsing onto dew-soaked grass. Stars spun overhead. Above them, the ruins trembled, then caved inward. Dust billowed skyward. Eryndor lay back, chest heaving. That was insane. Silence limped over. Call it an adventure. Liraen rolled onto her back, gazing at the serene sky for the first time in days. No running, no fighting, just breathing. At least we're alive, she murmured. Eryndor glanced at her, a soft smile tugging at his lips. And we'll stay that way. Their hands found each other's. The Nexus heart's pulse had stopped, but above, their hearts beat on. Together. The first rays of dawn stretched across the sky, painting it in soft hues of pink and gold. Light poured over the land, bathing the ruins of Liraen Hollow in a gentle glow. The cool morning breeze drifted by, carrying the fresh scent of dew and earth, as if trying to wash away the remnants of the chaos from the night before. Liraen sat on a weathered stone outcrop, eyes fixed on the distant horizon where the grand spires of Veloria Palace pierced the morning mist. The rooftops gleamed silver under the new sun, pristine and serene, a stark contrast to the turmoil swirling within her. Behind her, Eryndor approached, holding 2 small flasks of water. He settled beside her, offering one. Drink. Feels like we've lived a lifetime in just a day. She accepted it with a nod, sipping slowly. I never thought we'd survive to see this morning. Feels surreal, Eryndor murmured. His gaze traced the sun's ascent. The world teetered on the edge, and yet the sun still rises. Liraen's eyes lingered on the palace. We stopped Malric, but stopping one man doesn't end the rot. No, Eryndor agreed. Power attracts more vultures. Someone else will step into the vacuum. And the council expects me to return, to claim the throne, she said quietly, words weighed with conflict. Eryndor studied her for a moment. What do you want? A breath. I thought I knew. I thought duty was everything, but now, she paused, voice softer. Part of me craves peace, to stop running. There's nothing wrong with that, Eryndor said. We could leave, start over. I can rebuild the Apothecary. Small town, quiet mornings, no crowns, no politics. The image tempted her. Warmth, laughter, mornings filled with the scent of herbs instead of blood. A life where she could breathe, be. Yet, Faces flickered in her mind, the villagers caught in war's wake, the soldiers who fell for a cause they barely understood. Her father's stern gaze haunted her still. Peace for herself or responsibility for others? If I walk away, she whispered, who stands for those who can't? Eryndor sighed. If you stay... She glanced at him, lips curving. Did I say you were invited? Harsh, he chuckled. I offer undying loyalty, and you mock me. Her laughter, soft, real, broke the heaviness between them. I need to face them, she said at last, rising. Running ends here. Eryndor stood, draping his cloak over her shoulders. Queen or not, you'll freeze if you don't cover up. Not queen, she corrected, tugging the cloak closer. Just someone done hiding. The Veloria palace welcomed them with cool marble halls echoing with history. Sunlight streamed through high windows, casting golden patterns across tapestries depicting battles long past. The council awaited in the grand chamber, faces lined with suspicion, curiosity, and barely concealed judgment. Lord Aaron, the elder statesman, stepped forward. Lady Liraen, Veloria stands at a crossroads. What path do you choose? Silence pressed close. Liraen's voice rang clear. I will not take the crown. Gasps rippled through the room. Murmurs swelled, some disapproving, others intrigued. But, she continued steady, I will serve as advisor. Veloria needs deeds, not a figurehead. I won't rule, but I will fight for this kingdom's future. Aren regarded her a long moment, then inclined his head. Unexpected, yet perhaps exactly what we need. Outside the council hall, Eryndor exhaled. So, all that build-up for you to say no thanks to a throne? She shrugged. Politics and ball gowns? Not my style. Could have fooled me, he grinned. They stepped into the sunlight, warmth sinking into their bones. Weeks later, laughter rang through Veloria's streets. Markets bustled, children darted between stalls, their joy echoing against stone walls. On a quieter corner, a modest wooden sign creaked gently in the breeze. Elora Remedies, healing for body and soul. Inside, the shop smelled of herbs and honey. Eryndor stirred tea while Liraen organized glass jars along shelves. You're eating the stock again, she accused, eyeing him as he sneakily bit into a pastry. Quality control, he defended around a mouthful. The door chimed. An elderly woman stepped in, warmth in her eyes. They say you heal wounds, even the ones you can't see. Liraen glanced at Eryndor. He nodded. We do our best, she smiled. That night, they sat on the shop steps beneath a canopy of stars. The world stretched quiet around them, crickets singing softly. You know, Liraen murmured, head resting on his shoulder, I never thought I'd find peace again. Eryndor laced his fingers with hers. We fought for it, worth every scar. She gazed upward as a shooting star streaked across the sky. Yeah, I think so too. Above them, the heavens glimmered. Around them, life continued. Messy, beautiful, imperfect. And sometimes, peace wasn't something you found. It was something you chose. Together, always. At its heart, the story of Liraen and Eryndor is a reflection of the choices we face between duty and personal happiness, power and responsibility, and running away versus standing firm. In modern life, we often find ourselves torn between pursuing personal desires and meeting societal expectations. Liraen's journey reminds us that true leadership isn't about titles or authority, but about actions that uplift others and decisions rooted in compassion. Sometimes, choosing to step away from power can be the bravest choice if it means preserving integrity and kindness. Eryndor's unwavering support emphasizes the importance of loyalty and connection, reminding us that facing life's challenges with someone who believes in us can make even the hardest paths bearable. Their shared journey shows that healing doesn't come only from grand victories, but from small, everyday choices, offering help, choosing honesty, and nurturing peace. Most importantly, the tale teaches that peace isn't found in escaping problems, but in confronting them with courage and kindness. In a fast-paced world filled with noise and ambition, sometimes the most radical act is to choose simplicity, integrity, and to live a life aligned with our deepest values. Now that the story has come to an end, and your mind still carries the gentle emotions it evoked, allow yourself to fully relax. Find the most comfortable position in your bed. If you can, gently place your hand on your abdomen, feeling each breath flow through your body. Inhale slowly, hold it for a few seconds, and exhale gently, as if you're releasing all the tension with every out-breath. Continue this rhythm. With each exhale, let go of the lingering worries and weight of the day. Now bring your attention to your body. Start from your toes. Imagine them softening, gently melting into the warmth of your blanket. Move your awareness up to your feet, ankles, then your calves and thighs. Let any tension dissolve and drift away. Continue this mindful scan up to your hips, abdomen, and chest. Feel your heartbeat slowing, steady and calm. As you reach your shoulders and arms, release any remaining heaviness. Relax your neck, jaw, and the tiny muscles around your eyes. If thoughts arise, simply acknowledge them and let them pass, like clouds drifting across a quiet sky. Now, imagine yourself standing in a peaceful forest under a soft moonlight. The cool night air is fresh, and each breath feels like a gentle breeze washing away fatigue. You hear the soft murmur of a nearby stream, its soothing sound gently lulling you into deeper relaxation. Let the healing frequency music surrounding you seep into your being. The calming sounds embrace you like a gentle wave, helping your mind quiet down and your body begin its natural process of restoration. This music resonates with the rhythm of nature's heartbeat, reminding you that you are safe, nurtured, and cared for. All the worries of today are behind you now. In this moment, it's just you, your breath, the soothing sounds, and the growing peace within your heart. Wishing you a deep, restful, and nourishing sleep. When you wake, may you feel refreshed, renewed, and ready to embrace the new day ahead. Good night. You deserve this peace and healing.